Hello, Boston sports fans. My name is Jake Ignazuski, Jake Iggy or Iggy for short, and this is Bosox Talk presented to you by Boston Sports Report. And today, I'm going to be talking about why I am very frustrated with the offseason that the Red Sox have had so far. And it's been pretty quiet so far, and especially since we've had a lot of exciting things happen, not only with the Boston Bruins, but with the Boston Celtics. And then we had a disappointing loss last night with the New England Patriots losing to the Tennessee Titans. So there's been a lot of excitement around a lot of these different teams in Boston, and you can watch and listen to a lot of the analysis that we do at Boston Sports Report over on our Instagram page. And they also did a podcast about the Boston Celtics and the Patriots game coming up. And I also do a little of my own independent analysis on a ton of different sports topics. And so you could go and follow me over on my Instagram at Iggy Sports Talk. I would greatly appreciate the support. So today I am going to be talking about why I am so confused. It seems like that the front office has been doing absolutely nothing to really fix any of the needs that the Red Sox have at the moment, or just give us fans any sort of clarity or answer any questions that we might have, because I'm very confused of the state of the Boston Red Sox at the moment. You know, we started off the season with $238 million of payroll. We had the highest tax penalty for the luxury tax this past season. We have a lot of question marks, not only with our position needs, but with the future, and if we're going to make trades of guys like Mookie Betts, David Price, Jackie Bradley Jr., you know, what sort of moves are we going to make to not only make this team better, but be able to find a way to lower that payroll so then we're able to have some sort of flexibility. And then not only do we have one of the worst farm systems in the major leagues, we don't have a ton of young talent coming up to really reinforce these needs that we are going to have in the next coming years. And if we just really look at the payroll that the Red Sox are dealing with at this moment, it's coming from a lot of the stuff that Dave Dombrowski has done over the last 4 years. And the new president of baseball operations, Chaim Bloom, is going to have to take on this burden and really figure out these sort of creative moves to find a way to take all this payroll off of the Red Sox's hands. And that's why we've seen really not a lot of things happen with the Red Sox so far this offseason, because their hands sort of have been tied. But at the same time, they haven't been doing anything to even loosen the knot a little bit on that rope around our hands. So looking at a few of the highest payroll salaries that we do have to pay at the moment, looking at first, Chris Sale, he just signed a huge contract with the Red Sox, but in my opinion, he well deserved it, at least for the seasons that he had prior to this last season. And this last season was a little bit lackluster and very sort of mediocre in his regards over his last career. But he is getting paid $145 million through 2024. Then we look at Xander Bogaerts making $120 million till 2025. And that was actually one of the best moves, in my opinion, that Dave Dombrowski has made, or at least made during his tenure with the Red Sox. But at least in this last season, he really signed Bogaerts to a pretty low value deal, because we were looking at Bogaerts making around $20 to $25 million on the open market if he were to hit that in 2020 when he was slated to. And it was very nerve-wracking as a fan, because we didn't really know or have any reinforcements to put anybody at shortstop if Bogaerts decided to leave. And Bogaerts has come up through the system. You know, he's been relatively consistent, and he really broke out last season. So thank God we locked him up for the future. And then looking at David Price, which has been a big talking point throughout this offseason on whether he will be traded to any of the teams that are looking for starting pitching at the moment, or if he is going to stay with the Red Sox. And it was also a big question mark after the 2018 season of if he was going to, pick up that option, or if he was going to opt out and look for a bigger deal. But because he has had such a disappointing season with the Red Sox over these last 3 years, he just hasn't looked like the ace pitcher that he did when he was with the Rays, the Detroit Tigers, and the Toronto Blue Jays in his few years before the Red Sox. And they have a hefty paycheck to pay him in $96 million till 2022, and we've been paying him $31 million over these last few seasons. And he's just not worth the value. And that's why we've seen it's been so difficult for Chaim Bloom to be able to find a viable and, good-looking deal for the Red Sox for the future for David Price, because he would have to potentially lock him or pair him with a guy like Andrew Benintendi, Mookie Betts, or Jackie Bradley Jr. to be able to load off a lot of that payroll, because not a lot of teams want to pick up $20 million to $25 million or even all of David Price's money for a mediocre pitcher in David Price and somebody that isn't totally in his prime anymore. And then we look at JD Martinez, who did just opt into his deal with the Red Sox. But if he does not opt out next season, we are slated to pay him $62.5 million through 2022. And it'll be really interesting to see, not only with the different options and the different possibilities that the Red Sox have talked about throughout this offseason of trying to move a lot of money, and if they'll trade Mookie Betts or if they won't. And what will really happen in the outfield if Mookie Betts does get traded? Will JD take over that right field position? Could JD just stay at DH? Or could he even move to first base? Because not a lot of people remember, with the Detroit Tigers, he was a primary first baseman, and he wasn't that bad at it. And it's just a question mark on whether the Red Sox want to take a chance at putting a position player and trying to change his position like they tried to do with Hanley Ramirez at left field and also at first base. And we saw in the past that did not work out well. But JD had a very productive season last year, hitting .304 with 37 home runs. And he's been very consistent through the last few seasons, and he's a huge bat in that lineup that really is able to bring a turbocharge to the lineup anytime he steps on that field. And you see it most of the times when there's a lot of guys on base. JD is that clutch player to drive those players in. And then now looking at Nathan Eovaldi, who is going to be making $51 million till 2022. And he's been a huge question mark as well. Will he get traded or not? And what will we see him look like next season? Because we saw it the year before. He was really good for the half a season that he was with the Red Sox after getting traded to the Red Sox. And the reason he made all the money that he did last offseason was because his great performance and dominant performance in the World Series, pitching the 8 to 9 innings that he did pitch for the Red Sox. And he looked like a superstar. And we really obviously thought that we were going to get the same Nathan Eovaldi that we did, but after his injury, it just didn't seem like the same pitcher. And with all the different teams that were looking at him last season, like the Astros and all the other teams that were willing to put big money up for Nathan Eovaldi, it really looked like a pretty good move by Dave Dombrowski at the moment. And then we saw it when he got injured in spring training and wasn't able to come back till about July or August, and looked atrocious when he started for the Red Sox. And then they slot him right into the bullpen, and he just would let up 2 to 3 runs every single inning. And especially as a bullpen pitcher, you don't want to let up that. But it's not like the Red Sox were doing something out of the ordinary, because Eovaldi used to be a bullpen pitcher. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we got him during that 2018 trade deadline, because he had that versatility. And it'll be really interesting to see if he is still in the rotation this next season, if he's able to have a bounce back year. And in my opinion, with how great he has been throughout his career and how great he was with the Red Sox in 2018, I honestly think that he's going to put around a 3.50 to 4 ERA next season. I think that's a realistic prediction for Nathan Eovaldi, and I think he'll be pretty productive for the Red Sox and come up very big when we do need him. And then What not a lot of people still remember is that we do still have to pay Dustin Pedroia. He's making $25 million till 2021, even if he does not play. And even though he has been on rehab for the last 3 years. And so I'm just going to give my opinion real quick on Dustin Pedroia in general and his whole situation. He is my favorite player. He was my favorite player growing up, and he still is my favorite player right now for the Boston Red Sox. And I just need him to play one more game. That's all I'm asking from him. I understand he doesn't want to destroy his legs for his future. He doesn't want to have to be limited just because he loves the game for his next few years, his next multiple years, I should say, living on this earth. He talked about how difficult it was just to get around his house, just to get around everyday life. And, I really just believe that Red Sox fans and the Red Sox and him as just a player in general just deserves one last game in Fenway, one last goodbye, hurrah, getting the whole treatment of a standing ovation of all these gifts. Dustin Pedroia deserves it. He's been a legend in a Red Sox uniform. He has been the grit and soul of what the Red Sox are all about. And in my opinion, what baseball, quite honestly, is all about is just the hard work, the grit, just going at 120% every single game and just loving what you do. And we saw it every single time Pedroia walked down on that field. It was just a joy to watch him. And I just need to see him play one more game. And then we get into Rusney Castillo, who is going to be making $13.5 million till 2020. And obviously, that contract has really not worked out well. He's been in AAA for the last 4 or 5 years and has done absolutely nothing. But he was supposed to be the next Jacoby Ellsbury, the next Jose Abreu, and we just really saw it, especially for another example, Yasmani Tomas, when he signed with the Diamondbacks. Those Cuban players had a lot of excitement coming in and just really no reward when they came over, especially except for Jose Abreu and Yasiel Puig. And now then also looking into Mookie Betts, who is slated to make around $27 to $30 million in arbitration. And then also looking at Jackie Bradley Jr., who could be getting around 11 or is slated to get $11 million because the Red Sox picked up his tender. And just to talk about Jackie Bradley Jr., I really want the Red Sox to trade him. I really am just fed up, quite honestly, with Jackie Bradley Jr.'s offensive ability. Obviously, he, in my opinion, is the best defensive outfielder, center fielder in the MLB, and he just makes these unreal plays that just leave your jaw just laying on the ground. And it's just a masterpiece out in the outfield, but then once he steps onto the plate, it's just like he just forgot how to play baseball. And don't get me wrong, he hit 21 home runs last season, but the year before he hit 13, the year before he hit 10, and over the last 3 seasons, he's hit 234. And we've even seen him get as low as 190, 180 during the seasons. And the reason I am just so fed up with just Jackie Bradley's offensive ability in general is because I've been hearing it. I've been hearing it for 5 years. Jackie Bradley Jr. is going to figure it out. He's going to go down to AAA. He's going to figure out his swing. He's going to change his swing. He's going to change his mindset. He's going to go into the batting cages. He's a different player this year. I just have not seen it. It's just every single year, let's just hit in the low 200s and then just find a way to get 10 home runs. But obviously, he does jump up on the wall. He does climb up on the wall. He does make these acrobatic catches that we haven't seen a guy do since freaking Coco Crisp. But, we just need a much better, not only 9-hole hitter, but just a much better hitter for the future, especially if you're going to be getting paid $11 million. And I just am just so annoyed with how have been going so far with this offseason and just have not found a way to move either guys like David Price or Jackie Bradley Jr. And I've been a guy who's really been on the up and down or in the middle about if I really want to trade Mookie Betts or not. and if it'll be a great option for the Red Sox at this moment in time, or if they should wait till the trade deadline, or if they should just try and sign him during the offseason. But I am just in such deep belief that he is not going to try and work with the Red Sox during these next few months before the season starts to work out an extension, or even throughout the season. And I just am so set on the fact that he is going to try and get $35 to $40 million next season. He deserves it. He deserves it not only because of his talent, but because of the value that he has built up himself over these last 3 years. You know, he's been an MVP candidate for these last 3 years. He was second once for the MVP, and then he won it last year. And we just really saw how great of a talent he is and how great of a franchise player Mookie Betts is for the city of Boston as well. But you just got to look at the reality of it. We have an awful farm system. Mookie Betts would be able to really help us be able to build back up that farm system. And he's going to be looking for $30 to $40 million next season that the Red Sox just don't have at this moment in time. And something that I thought about when thinking about this video, just picking up my notes and all that sort of stuff. What about the fact of trading JD? Now, I talked about it before in how productive of a player he is and how he could either opt in or opt out after this next season, but he is still slated to make $20 million. And if we find a way to trade Jackie Bradley, trade David Price, and trade also potentially JD Martinez, you're looking at about $51 million in payroll that is just taken off. Obviously, you are going to get talent taken away from your team with these sort of situations, but with talent going away, you're going to get young talent back in. And potentially with these different trades, they would be able to pick up more versatile players, young players, and very controllable players that would be cheap options for the Red Sox, especially in this time of need when they need those sort of players. And when you really look at JD on how versatile he is in the field, you know, I talked about it. He can play obviously DH. That is his general specific position. But he can also play right field as well. He's just not very good or consistent in being able to make the plays out in right field. And I just don't believe that he would be very good at first base. Even though it's an option, even though it's something that I think it'd be interesting if the Red Sox did, I just don't believe that he would be a very viable option for the future for the Red Sox at first base, especially with the different options that they have on the free agent market, that they have on the trade market, and that they also can potentially have through their farm system, which I'll talk about a little bit later on in this podcast. But it'll just be really interesting to see what the Red Sox would be able to get for JD Martinez. A lot of teams are looking for these big bats. A lot of teams are looking for a guy that is able to hit 36 home runs for them, that is able to put up over 100 RBIs, and also be able to consistently hit over 300, which JD has been able to do over these last 3 seasons. And I think that we would be able to get a lot of prospect talent, a lot of young talent of guys that would either be able to fill in the first base position, the second base position, the outfield, and potentially the pitching and relief position. And with all these trades of either Jackie Bradley Jr. or Mookie Betts, it'll just be interesting to see how they're going to be able to build back up that outfield, because it was so strong, and it obviously has been so strong. And it's just very disappointing of how the Red Sox have been able to find a way to, you know, make these different sort of moves, especially with how disappointing of a season they had last year after having one of the greatest seasons in franchise history with winning 119 wins. And they just need to figure something out that is really able to bring the excitement back for the Red Sox fans. And then if we look at a guy like Andrew Benintendi, who just really was awful last year. I was trying to think of an adjective of just trying to find a way of a silver lining for his season last year, but it just was nothing special. He hit 266 with 13 home runs. And I just remember seeing in the offseason him pumping weights, him getting big, him bulking up, and everybody's like, oh my God, he's going to hit 25 home runs. He could be a 30 home run hitter. This is the year that he's going to develop, and we just did not see it. We just saw it right from opening day. He just fell right on his face. It just seemed like he's just striking out left and right. He didn't seem like he cared when he walked up to the plate. And I'm just waiting for him to blossom. I'm really just waiting for the kid to develop. And he was a number 6 pick out of Arkansas. He was considered the best hitter coming out of college baseball. And I just have not seen it. And it's something where, he's only making $4 million, which is great for our position at the moment and for how productive he could be in the future and how much potential Andrew Benintendi does have. But once his payroll starts going up and if he starts consistently not producing how the Red Sox, I believe he should be, I think he'd be an interesting trade chip as well. Because just like I said with Mookie, he's a very high value and a lot of potential. And so he would be able to grab in a lot of those high tier prospects as well as some very good controllable young players that the Red Sox would be able to slot into their positional needs that they do have at the moment. So I know throughout the start of this podcast, I've been talking a lot about how Chaim Bloom hasn't been doing anything and how I'm very disappointed in how the Red Sox have gone about their offseason so far. But quite honestly, they've made some small moves that do make sense. They've made some tiny moves that I do agree with, especially because there's some high potential guys that have low value at the moment, and we've been able to pick them up for a very cheap price. And I think that they'd be able to help us a lot during this next season. And I started at the start of the season when we got Jose Pariza for $4 million, and he's a guy that can really play anywhere in the field. And it came out in a lot of articles once we did sign him that we are looking at him as a very huge pickup that is able to be very versatile all throughout the field and is able to really play the role that Brock Holt had played for the last 4 years for the Red Sox. And Pariza isn't somebody that is going to hit the cover off the baseball, but he is somebody that is very consistent at getting on base. And we even did see he had an influx of power during 2018 when he hit 16 home runs, and all throughout the start of his career, he was hitting about 3 to 5 home runs. And then we also saw it last year when he was able to put up 6. Obviously, that's a huge drop of 10 home runs, but there was also a drop in the amount of games that he got to see in the at-bats that he had. So it definitely goes to show that if you put him out there for about 600 up at-bats, you could get some good numbers off of the guy, because he was able to put up a 280 average when he had 600 up at-bats in 2018, and like I just said, 16 home runs. And just as if we stuck him at second base, we haven't gotten that production at second base in years whatsoever. And if we're able to just slot him anywhere, that'd be amazing. He would just be able to, obviously, I'm not predicting that the guy is going to be the next coming of some great of a great utility player like Ben Zobrist or the much better of Brock Holt, but it's a great pickup for $4 million and a 1-year deal that I think doesn't have a ton of risk and could have a lot of high reward. And then we saw the pitching signing of Martin Perez for $6 million, and then he also does have an option for 6.25 for the 2020 season, for the 2021 season. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how he does do for the Red Sox, especially since he was able to get a low to high 3 ERA last season. And he started off the season pretty rough, but ended the season with the Twins with a very consistent and very surprising performance that I think he would be able to continue on through this next season as a very good and low-valued 4 to 5 starter for the Red Sox. And I thought it was pretty smart when we did also give him that option for next season, because if he goes out there and puts a mid to 3 ERA, he's coming back next season. Especially for a 4 to 5 starter, that's perfect. That's all we need. And for $6 million, sign me up. And I just remember him being so consistent with the Texas Rangers, but I'm talking about that from 5 years ago. And so it'll be really interesting to see how he will be able to be slotted in to that Red Sox rotation. And then we also saw the most recent pickup for the Red Sox in Kevin Plawecki, who is a catcher who has played for the Mets and also the Indians, and he's only 28 years old. And the interesting fact about this is when I was preparing for this podcast, when I was getting all my notes ready, it showed that the needs that the Red Sox most have are bullpen help, first base help, bench help, and then also they need some catching security. And so what I decided to do is looked at the free agents that were still out there in the catching market, because I've been hearing that it was very thin. There's only Travis d'Arnaud, there's only Yasmani Grandal, and I saw Plawecki's name right on that list, and this was a few days before we signed the guy, and I even put him in my notes as a great pickup that the Red Sox could have, because he's a guy that was looked at as a top prospect when he was coming through the farm system, and he was also picked 35 in 2012. And especially since he's only 28 years old, if we were able to pick him up for $1 to $2 million, which I'm pretty sure that's the base salary that he did get, because he did get a major league contract, not a minor league contract, and they haven't fully come out with all the numbers, but still a very low contract for this sort of, high reward, low risk player in Plawecki, I thought was very, very smart for the Red Sox. And I was jumping out of my chair excited, because even though he's only the backup catcher, this just shows the stepping stones of smart moves that I think Chaim Bloom is going to be making for a lot of years for the Red Sox to come. And he only hit .218 during 804 appearances with the Mets and the Indians through 2015 and 2018, and it just has not been a very productive offensive career for Kevin Plawecki, but he is a very consistent catcher. And I think with a lot of the guys that the Red Sox do have on the team, with all the great hitting that they do have in their lineup, I think he could learn a lot from these guys. And we were saying the same thing about Christian Vasquez last year. 2 years ago, when he was only hitting around 230 with he was hitting like 5 home runs a year. And then he had a surge in offense over the last 2 years and has really picked it up. And so when I saw this pickup for the Red Sox, I was extremely excited. And it just shows, Chaim Bloom is a smart guy. He'll make some smart moves, and I'm not discounting that whatsoever. I was so ecstatic about the hiring that the Red Sox made with Chaim Bloom, but he just needs to make some moves. He just needs to do something to be able to help the Red Sox be able to have some sort of, contention this year, and not so many question marks going into the season. Because the reason I am making this podcast right now is because we're looking at one more month in this offseason. And then if you think about it, it's going to be February. Then we're going to be 1 week away from spring training. Yes, folks, it's that close. Even though you still see white on the ground and it's still 10 degrees in the northern states, baseball is coming around the corner, and the Red Sox need to do something. And we're just seeing it with all these different rumors of the potential trading of Mookie Betts to the Dodgers, and the potential merging of David Price to the Dodgers, because the Dodgers do really need some pitching. And we're just going to have to see what's going to happen over this next month. And I'm really hoping that January is going to be a very busy month for the Red Sox. And especially with all these different rumors, with Mookie Betts going to the Dodgers really starting to ramp up this last week, this is when I started to sort of get excited. And then we saw, obviously, a report that the Red Sox aren't actively trying to deal Mookie. And so we sort of keep on getting these very not consistent reports about the Red Sox trading of Mookie Betts. And just to get a little bit into that, it'll be interesting to see what sort of prospects the Red Sox would be able to get from the Dodgers. And there's been names talked about like Corey Seager potentially going to the Sox, and I think he'd be a really great guy to be slotted into that second base position. And then also potential young pitchers like Dustin May, like Jonah Gray, and Tony Glisson. I think it'd be really great if the Red Sox were able to pick up a few of their very highly touted pitching prospects and be able to really build up that farm system to be able to get some sort of clarity and some sort of excitement for the future. And I thought it was really interesting to see that the Red Sox haven't been very insistent on including the infielder Gavin Lux, that is so highly praised by the Dodgers for his not only prospect value, but for how versatile he is in the field and how exciting of a player he is coming up. And it was very surprising because, I mean, Gavin Lux can either play shortstop or second base, and they were also very hard on trying to get Corey Seager, at least in the reports that I had read. And I think Gavin Lux would be a great pickup for the Red Sox. But as we've seen with the Francisco Lindor talks, the Dodgers are so blatant and so just rock-headed in trading Gavin Lux, and have refused multiple times to the Cleveland Indians that they do not want to trade Lux whatsoever. So now to really get into what the Red Sox are looking for this offseason and what they really need to pick up either from trades or from free agency to really be not only a better team during this next season, but a more consistent team for the future. And that's something that I've just been very frustrated that it doesn't seem like Chaim Bloom is really focusing on, especially in the aspect of the farm system, because we have not really gotten anybody to help our 30th ranked farm system in the MLB. Yep, that's right, folks. We are last in the farm system rankings. And it was just really interesting to hear Chaim Bloom talk about the farm system, because he said he just doesn't really want to give away any sort of young talent along with David Price to be able to get that salary off of our books. And he stated in saying, with so much of what we're always going to try and accomplish is by certainly now is to make sure that we have a strong farm system as possible. And I just haven't really seen any sort of moves recently to really be able to build up that farm system whatsoever. And so the Red Sox are going to have to look to free agency or to trades to be able to, find those needs that they have to fill before opening day starts. And Bloom is looking for, at the moment, bullpen help. He's eyeing rotation help and also exploring different bench options. And like I talked about last week, we still have no clue who's playing first. It could either be Michael Chavez or just some magical guy that is going to show up on opening day. I have zero clue, because Chavez is also slotted to be our second baseman. And I also just don't know who's going to play second base either. Like maybe Pariza. I have no clue. But just to talk about a little bit of first base, just basing off of, also going off of what I talked about last week, they didn't get Travis Shaw, they didn't get Justin Smoke, and there still is a lot of options that are very cheap on the free agent market of guys like Greg Bird and also guys like Eric Thames, who, when I was looking up the Thames' stats, and I was just so surprised of not only how consistent he's been throughout the last few years, because I just haven't heard his name a lot ever since he hit. I don't know if you remember 2 years ago when he came back from Korea, he hit like 7 to 14 home runs to start off the season. And we were just looking at this guy as the next just huge home run hitter in the MLB. And we just saw a little bit of a dip in his average, and that's when all the excitement really started to stop building up. And we were still able to see he was still able to hit 25 home runs last year with a 247 average. And he can play outfield, he can play first, and he can play DH. And so back to what I was talking about with trading JD. We trade JD, and we just pick up Eric Thames. And Eric Thames can literally do very similar to what JD can do, but they could pick up Thames for around $45 million, even cheaper because we saw Travis Shaw was able to get $5 million. We saw Maikel Franco was able to get 2. And to get on to Travis Shaw, more of the reports that came out about why the Red Sox lost in the sweepstakes of Travis Shaw to their division rival in the Blue Jays is because they didn't have enough money, because they didn't make the moves. And the time has been ticking. The clock is still going. And it's been 2 months and we've done nothing to shred the payroll. And that's just why I am so frustrated. It just, oh my God. So this is the reason why I'm making this podcast. I'm just so frustrated and just fed up with some of the clueless moves that the Red Sox have made over the years, and a lot of the just crickets chirping that we've also done when the critical moments that we need to make moves. And we can also look at a guy like Bobby Dalbec as a future option for first. He had 27 home runs last year in between Portland and Pawtucket. And I'm just not very trusting in a rookie having to come up and be able to perform in the big stage of Fenway, because we've seen a lot of rookies, for example, like Andrew Benintendi, for example, Rafael Devers, they get off to a slow start. And especially in this critical time for the Red Sox, I really want them to find a guy that is able to be very consistent, not only to start today, but for the future. And you can say Dalbec is a great option for the future, but he's not going to help us win right now. And it's just very concerning on the direction that the Red Sox are going to go, because with how limited it seems like their options or their money space is, with how they've been dealing with their money this year, is that they're going to be limited to minor league options or near minimum guarantees until camp starts. And that's one of the reports that came out about some of the bullpen help that they've been trying to get. And so going on to the bullpen, Steve Cishek is a Cape Cod native, and he came out and said, I would love to play for the Red Sox. And especially a guy that threw with an ERA of 2.55 in 134 innings for the last 2 seasons with the Cubs, sign me up. I need that guy coming out of my bullpen every day or every 2 days, because last year was embarrassing. Last year was a disgrace for what we did in that bullpen, and I am not going to sit here and have another offseason where we do absolutely nothing to that bullpen and expect it to be, this magical fix. And, we're just going to, we're not going to have a closer. We're just going to pick out of a hat and figure out which guy makes sense. Like, no, that didn't seem to work out whatsoever last season. And obviously, I understand we're not going to go for guys like Will Harris or Dylan Betances, because they made $8 to $10 million this last offseason. And they made what in my opinion is the exact value that they should have made for being a top relief option. But then we also look at a few other cheap options like CJ Edwards or Adam Warren, who are both very young. Obviously, CJ Edwards is a little bit younger at the age of 38, and Warren is still around 31 to 32, but they made $900,000, and they both had a 3 to 4 ERA in the bullpen, and would be very cheap and high reward options for the Red Sox, and a dire need that they have for the bullpen. And there's still guys out there that they could pick up, but it just doesn't seem like they're having any sort of interest or any sort of drive to pick up any help for the bullpen. There's guys like Nate Jones, who made $1 million last year. Arodys Vizcaíno, who has had a low 2 ERA for the last 3 years and is still 27. And then Sam Dyson and Juan Casio, who would be very good, viable options in that back end of the Red Sox bullpen. Because with how inconsistent the starting pitching had been last season, if we expect it to, just magically fix itself and be able to still have a awful bullpen to fall back on, this season is going to be very embarrassing, and it's going to be hard to watch. Which, with how the offseason is going already, I don't have a lot of hope. I don't really know. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that more, obviously, once spring training starts up and gets closer to us. But this is why I'm so frustrated. And to get on to starting pitching, there is still a lot of starting pitching options out there for us to pick up, especially if we trade guys like either Nathan Eovaldi or David Price. We need somebody to help fill in that spot and be able to give us consistent innings day in and day out. And so we look at guys like Danny Salazar. We look at guys like Taijuan Walker, who Taijuan Walker is still 27. Danny Salazar's around 32 to 33. And they're still very cheap options who both of those players were injured for the last year and didn't have great seasons before that. But they are still both very exciting players that have been consistent throughout the whole start of their career and could be great comeback guys and very cheap, high reward options as well. And then we look at guys like Drew Smyly and also Alex Wood. Alex Wood didn't have a great season with the Reds last year, but he had a great season before with the Dodgers and is still very young as well as Drew Smyly, who had about a 4 ERA. But both of those guys would still be great people to slot into that fifth spot, and then we would put Perez up in the fourth. But we need to figure something out. We got 4 left-handers in that rotation and only 1 righty. The hitters are going to see it before it comes. And we're just going to get the ball cover hit off of us, day in and day out when we show up to Fenway. And the Red Sox and Chaim Bloom just need to figure out something to really give not only the fans, but just the team some clarity on what they're going to do in the rotation. Because it was interesting to see, especially when we got Chris Sale, when we did from the White Sox, it was looked at as our rotation was going to be the Golden State Warriors of the league, and we're going to kill everybody, and we just have not been able to see it. Not only because David Price has been inconsistent, but so has Chris Sale, and the back end of the rotation just has not lived up to the standards that everybody was thinking. And then also to go to the bench or potential off or outfield replacements if either Mookie Betts or Jackie Bradley Jr. does get traded are guys like Domingo Santana, Steven Souza, and those are just the 2 of some young players that, in my opinion, would be great signings for the Red Sox. Not so much Steven Souza. I had the thought when I was getting ready for this podcast that he'd be a great option, especially because he had 30 home runs in 2017, but he does have a lot of injury issues. And so I don't think he'd be a great outfield replacement for either guys like Jackie Bradley or Mookie Betts, but he would be a really good, viable bench option that we would be able to slot in anywhere to the outfield. And he has had some issues, like I said, with injuries. He hurt his shoulder in the start of the 2018 season. And then this past season, he hurt his knee during a spring training game, slipping on home plate and hyperextending his left knee. And he only hit 64. He only played 64 games in 2018 with 5 home runs and hitting .220. But I think he'd be a great comeback player. And to get to the more exciting option of Domingo Santana, he's only 27 years old. He had 21 home runs last year with a .253 average and made $1 million. He's making $10 million less than Jackie Bradley Jr. was, and he played much, much better than Jackie did last year as well. And it's just something where I think the Red Sox need to wake up. I think they need to look in the mirror and understand where they are as a club and understand that it's a scary time right now to be a Red Sox fan because the Yankees could potentially win the World Series next year and be very high contenders in the AL. And there's a lot of teams that are up on the rise as well with a lot of exciting young players. And the Red Sox are just staying stagnant, it seems like. Obviously, we have a lot of young players that are very exciting, but they cost a lot of money. And that's really starting to show with how much money we had to spend for the luxury tax penalty this year. And it's something that I think the Red Sox really need to figure out and take a step back and just really look at their options. And I really hope that they do something because they need to. They need to do something. And it'll be interesting to see what they do over these next few months. So I hope you guys did really like this podcast and were really interested in the information that I brought up. Let me know you can either tweet me at Iggy Sports Talk, or you can message me on my Instagram as well. But I would really like to hear what your guys' thoughts are about these different options that the Red Sox pick up and what you guys think the Red Sox will do. I also did want to mention I do make YouTube videos every single week. If you look me up on YouTube, it's Jake Iggy. And I'd really appreciate it if you guys would support me on any of those platforms. And I also do really greatly appreciate every single second that you guys are listening to this podcast. I'm so excited to do this, and I'm really excited for each Wednesday that I'm able to post one of these, and I'm so excited for this journey that you guys are taking with me. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday. See ya.